Ambassador Deepak Vohra, Special Advisor to Prime Minister of Lesotho, South Sudan and Guinea, is with us on the broadcast. Major Mohammed Ali Shah, Defense and Strategic Expert, is also here on the program. Sumit Peer, Political Analyst, also joins us. Joyita Basu, Editor of The Sunday Garden, is also here with us. Ambassador Vohra, let me come to you first. So, early 90s, I was in Russia myself. And the former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had been assassinated, and there were hoardings in all markets in Moscow, and there were Russians standing by looking at those hoardings and reading and weeping. This was just to give you an indication as to what kind of a relationship India and Russia enjoyed about 30 years ago. Is it still the same, or do you think a lot has changed?
Let me answer this question by taking you back to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. And for those of us who have forgotten, I would urge you to see a film called Dr. Zhivago. It was shot. It's a story of the height of the revolution.
Omar Sharif, yes.
Yeah. You know, we call India Mother India. The Russians called their country Mother Russia. The relationship was enormous. Raj Kapoor, when he was alive, if he had ever contested elections in the former USSR, he would probably have won. And it was insanely popular. Mithun Chakravarti was insanely popular. Shah Rukh Khan. Our films have been our best ambassadors there. Now the breakup of the Soviet Union, whatever reason, the breakup that was achieved without firing a bullet, 1991, broke up into 15 countries. Russia, which has this strong memory like we do, of having been one of the world's two hyperpowers for 70 years, suddenly found its nose rubbed in the dust. May I relate to you, and Ms. Basu, if you'll forgive me, I'll tell you a true story. You mentioned, sir, that you had been in Russia. Well, I was at the Rossia Hotel, which had 3,000 rooms or something like that in 1971. You ordered breakfast this morning, it would come after a week. I mean, it was gigantic, that place. And the true story is that one of my colleagues had checked in over there. When he was leaving, there was this elderly Russian with a young girl. He said to this colleague of mine, "Are you checking in or checking out?" My colleague said, "Why?" He said, "This is my granddaughter. We haven't eaten in 3 days. This is immediately after the collapse when the ruble finished. Could you give us some money?" And then he said something which I shall not repeat. But what I'm trying to say, sir, is that you have humiliated a very proud people, a once great nation. Russia then, after the present administration came, began to slowly build up its strength. For many years, they had to play second fiddle to China, which they are not used to doing. And the only friend who stood by them during this entire period of difficulty was India, the only meaningful friend. May I remind you, sir, in September last year, poor, starving, Garib India gives $1 billion soft loan to Russia for the development of its Far East. The international media won't report that. I mean, how can India do it? India is not supposed to have that kind of money. And the Russians who I've spoken to, I speak the language. The ones I've spoken to are enormously grateful for this show of solidarity and support that we have given to Russia. Right. So therefore, to answer your question, sir, the goodwill for India, the people-to-people relationship, the number of our engineers and scientists who were trained, the soldiers who were trained, the military officers by the Soviet Union, the goodwill for the Soviet Union, particularly for the Russians, in our hearts survives, and similarly on their side. May I just conclude with a personal note? I see we have a military officer. Sir, my father was in the Corps of Engineers, very famous general. And he used to tell me that the Russians, whenever we were being trained, the Soviets would come up and say, you know, in their own language, Beta, roll up your sleeves, Aja, main batata hu ye kaise chalta hai. Whereas he would say, again, right or wrong, the Americans would give equipment, say, press the trigger, the bullet will go out. If it doesn't go out, ring me up in Washington, I'll come and repair it. But the Russians would actually, whether the oil industry or steel or military, get down to brass tacks and teach you. Sir, we haven't forgotten that. They stood by us in our moment of difficulty, and we are standing by them in their in the period of some difficulty.
Okay, all right.
So this emotional contact will not go away.
Okay, so this emotional contact is not going to go away. Mohammed Ali Shah, what attaches Russia to China? China is communist and Russia is erstwhile communist. What leverage does China actually have over Russia? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was mute. Ambassador Vohra said it correctly, it's money, it's the economics at the end of the day, it's about trade, it's about business, it's the economy. Now, having said that, you know, of late, 23rd March, the Russian agencies reported that in the entire population of 101.46 million people in Russia, there were only 367 cases of COVID-19 in Russia, whereas Russia is on the border of two pandemic continents, Europe and Asia. But how can that be, still? But their mayor last week, Mr. Sergi, he himself clarified that the initial reporting was wrong. On 30th March, there is an Arabic version of the Russian paper, of the Russian Today, the Russia Al-Yon. It reported that America is trying to capitalize and trying to control the world economy, including the oil fields. But later on, it was proved wrong. They also had an opinion piece on NATO. Now, okay, I'll give you another thing. In the P7 countries, the idea was thrown about by the Prime Minister of UK, Mr. Boris Johnson. He said, let's get 3 more countries, including India, together and make it P10. So now when there are new allies coming against China, and plus, especially post-COVID, the money, Russia and China are coming closer and closer. Russia, which used to be a very close ally at one point of time, is now slowly and gradually coming very, very close to China. And as Ambassador Vohra correctly pointed out, he was bang on. He pointed out the background as well, but it is, at the end of the day, economics, money. Yeah, absolutely bang on over there, Vineet. See, Russia can play actually a very important part, but I think India that way is self-sufficient to take care of its affairs. But having said that, with Russia, see, for example, the fighter aircraft deal, which was already compromised because of propaganda. Much before yesterday's meeting, they had decided on that. Russia sells more advanced equipment to India than it sells to China, basically. And the same thing goes over here. But India certainly is self-sufficient to take care of its internal matters, be it with Pakistan, be it with China, be it with any external aggression.
Right.
But India is, at the end of the day, a peace-loving nation. हम किसी को छेड़ेंगे नहीं, अगर किसी ने अगर हमको छेड़ा तो हम तो छोड़ेंगे नहीं.
All right, Joyita.